From the JAMA Network, this is JAMA Otolaryngology Head and Neck Surgery Author Interviews. Conversations with authors exploring the latest clinical research, reviews, and opinions featured in JAMA Otolaryngology Head and Neck Surgery.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our podcast here for JAMA Otolaryngology Head and Neck Surgery. I'm your host, Paul Bryson, from the Cleveland Clinic, and today I'm delighted to have Dr. Karina de Sousa from the University of Pretoria in South Africa to discuss her upcoming article regarding the effectiveness of over-the-counter fitted hearing aids compared to an audiologist-fitted hearing aid. Welcome, Dr. de Sousa.
Thank you for having me.
Before we get started, could you give our listener a little background on you and also provide the context for this study looking at different hearing aids?
Sure. I am actually an audiologist by profession, and I have a very keen interest in research that is translational and is all focused about how we can make hearing care more accessible to those who need it. And this sort of also prompted my curiosity in the field of over-the-counter hearing aids, which, as you know, is quite a big thing in the US at the moment. In 2017, the FDA passed the OTC Hearing Aid Act in response to a growing need for more accessible and more affordable hearing care in the United States. And the final regulations actually came into effect just last year in October 2022. So the aim of over-the-counter or self-fitting hearing aids is to remove some of the barriers that basically have prevented people with mild to moderate hearing loss from obtaining hearing aids. Typically, hearing aids could only be sold through a licensed or credentialed hearing care professional, whereas over-the-counter hearing aids are sold directly to the consumer without the need for a prescription or need for a professional assessment. But to date, there has actually been quite limited literature confirming the effectiveness of over-the-counter or self-fitting hearing aids, especially using commercial devices in the market. And this is what prompted our curiosity in this research field.
Yes, I read with great interest the article because you're right. While we now have access to over-the-counter hearing aids, we do not have any sort of preliminary results that I'm aware of or that have been widely disseminated. So I think our listeners will be interested in your experience in South Africa with comparison of the over-the-counter option as well as the audiologist-fitted devices. Can you describe just, your basic methods and how and who you enrolled for your study?
Sure, let me just walk you through our method. We designed a randomized clinical trial where we enrolled about 64 people with hearing loss that were broadly in the mild to moderate hearing range, which is actually the required degree of hearing loss for over-the-counter self-fitting hearing aids according to the FDA. People were randomly allocated into either a self-fit or audiologist-fitted group. And for the self-fit group, they received a pair of FDA-approved self-fitting OTC hearing aids, and they were required to completely set it up themselves without any professional support. This means that they got the device, they had to use the accompanying instructional material and the app that came accompanied with the hearing aids to completely independently fit the hearing aids. For the audiologist-fitted group, they received the same pair of hearing aids, but were fitted according to clinical best practice recommendations using more precise audiological procedures. So the audiologist basically fitted the hearing aids according to prescriptive targets, and they provided instruction to the participants like it would be done in a typical clinical setting. We followed them over a course of 6 weeks. We followed up 2 weeks post-fitting and again 6 weeks post-fitting.
So very interesting. Did you take note of any extra phone calls or customer service interactions with the over-the-counter self-fitted hearing aids?
That's actually a very good question. This over-the-counter self-fitting hearing aid does provide customer support through an online call center, And yes, we actually did keep track of how many people requested support and fitting adjustment from the call center.
Yeah, go ahead and tell us about your findings. I'm very intrigued to hear. Part of me thinks, it's such a significant purchase for a lot of people here, particularly in the United States. And the thought of having, the expertise of the audiologist versus regular customer care is interesting to me. So, yeah, tell us what you found.
Sure. So at baseline, the groups really didn't differ significantly in terms of age or prior hearing aid experience, and actually their degrees of hearing loss were very similar in both groups. But what was really interesting to see is that when we followed them up after the first 2 weeks, we saw that the self fitting group had a small but meaningful improvement and better performance outcomes than what we saw with the audiologist fitted hearing aid. But whereas we saw them at 6 weeks, they were more equal in terms of their outcomes.
Yeah, very interesting. What do you think? How did you interpret these findings?
So it really is interesting. I think this could largely be owed to increased self efficacy when in the self fitting hearing group. And also, I think just where patients have a bit more control over their own hearing aid settings was probably something that made a difference as well. And one thing to keep in mind is when we fitted the audiologist fitted group, we fitted them according to what we call a prescriptive gain target, which means that the amplification of the device had to be set according to a specific formula for their hearing loss based on audiologically conducted procedures. And some research has actually shown that people, even though it does produce better speech recognition and noise outcomes, it might just be that it's not that comfortable for them.
Oh, interesting. So what you're saying is while it produces better outcomes, in real life day to day, it could maybe not capture what the patient wants. And are you saying that they might be so good and so finely tuned that it's a very significant change for the patient in regards to their experience of hearing?
Exactly.
Oh, very interesting. Now, you said the groups were pretty similar in the degree of hearing loss. Were there any other demographic nuances to the study group? Educational level, age, access to care, things that would be of interest. I'm sure that as in the United States, you may have patients that travel a great distance to your academic center.
Yes. So the groups were actually very similar in terms of English proficiency, which was part of our inclusion criteria, because this is a device specifically aimed for the US. So all the instructional material had to be in English, so they had to be English proficient. And although we didn't measure educational level per se, what we could see was that all of these participants were mainly from urban areas. So I think they are quite representative of what we would see for a typical US demographic.
Gotcha. So the study duration was about 6 weeks. Are you able to share any longer term data, or is that still sort of ongoing? And I guess the follow up to that is what are the lessons learned? And then I understand that at present, over the counter hearing aids are not available typically in South Africa. How do the findings of this work that you've done, perhaps move the needle to more hearing aid access in your country?
The story isn't finished, if I can put it that way. We definitely need more longitudinal data that supports the outcomes longer term because we know we measured them only for 6 weeks now, but we know there's a lot that can happen in terms of hearing aid use and benefit longer term. So that is currently underway where we're following up on the same participants now about 6 to 8 months post hearing aid fitting. In terms of how this relates to South Africa, you are right. The sale of self fitting over the counter hearing aids are not really permitted here at the moment. But I do think that this builds on a knowledge base for us to work from in terms of the effectiveness of self fitting over the counter hearing aids. I do think there is a great need because the data shows that the greatest proportion of people with hearing loss are actually in low and middle income countries where the access barriers are just so severe.
Yeah, the barriers are severe, and there's so many people that could benefit from hearing better. And, we're starting to see this data come out, all the impacts to people's ability to interact and maybe even cognitive health with hearing loss. So it will be very interesting to see as access to hearing aids hopefully enhances. Does it help with these things? Does it move the needle with regards to cognitive health and people hearing more than what they are now?
Absolutely.
Well, I wanted to thank you for your time today. Any take-home messages, any future collaborations that we should look for from your group, or any, sort of international collaborations with any of your colleagues around the world?
Sure. I think my takeaway message would be that technology, especially in audiology, is evolving at a rapid pace, and we can definitely expect a lot of development and new devices in the field of over the counter hearing aids. We know that there are many people with hearing loss, and from the findings of the study, it was clear that self fitting hearing aids can be an effective form of management for people with mild to moderate hearing loss. This can definitely be a convenient and more accessible option for those who have been hesitant to seek out help in the past or who have been unable to seek out help in the past. And given the high prevalence rate of adult hearing loss, as well as a growing body of evidence showing that hearing loss has these debilitating effects, having accessible hearing care options is extremely important. As you just highlighted, there's already a lot of new research showing that hearing loss is a modifiable risk factor for cognitive decline and dementia. So, having access to a form of intervention at an early stage is absolutely crucial. That being said, it is important to understand that OTC hearing aids are definitely not a one size fits all approach, and they are not suitable for all types and degrees of hearing loss. But I definitely think they have a huge place in terms of hearing care. And I think there will be lots of interesting research coming out in the near future with regards to longer term outcomes and even how we can adapt these technologies to actually fit within an audiological space. How audiologists can use some of these devices in clinical practice, and even how we can use a task shifting approach to try and get hearing devices fitted in a more convenient way to people who are in more remote and rural areas.
Well, Dr. D'Souza, I congratulate you on your work, and I look forward to your future research.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening today to the JAMA Oto podcast. To follow this and other JAMA Network podcasts, please visit us online at jamanetworkaudio.com. This episode was produced by Daniel Morrow at the JAMA Network. The audio team also includes Mary Lynn Furkaluk, Audrey Foreman, Lisa Harden, Hannah Park, Shelley Steffens, and Dr. Linda Brubaker, Senior Editor, Multimedia. Thanks for listening.